muscular bend by 7%. If you do it four times, reduce the probability of dying by.
Is there any scientific evidence?
In certain contexts, child
Read up on
marker curiosity.
following this conversation with Andrew, third time podcast, brilliant neuroscientist at Stanford University, and the host of one of the best, the best health and science podcasts in the world called Human Lab Podcast. Check him out on Instagram, Twitter, importantly, Andrew, great friend. Let's read the podcast. Support it. Check out our sponsor. Now, friends, Andrew. Meet again, my friend. We talk podcast once a year. I think we should. I was just talking to the guys. Show call. And yeah, okay. And there's this thing called Bang Bang, which people are probably watching that. It's the worst thing you do. Is you go to a restaurant, you full meal, and then go to another restaurant. Exactly. So they go Mexican, Italian, sushi, pizza, barbecue, IHOP, that one. Another thing reminds me of the joy of.
Last time we were hanging out, we went to comedy, and then went to Russian.
Yeah.
And it was a particularly fun experience to go to a Russian restaurant. I was the only person there to speak Russian and eat Russian too. And I felt walking in, they trusted me.
Yeah, the funny thing about the people there were talking to you in Russian, and then they refused to sort of they understood Russian. This is Russian, by the way. Anyway, what by way of question, word or the best? Let's call it a picking meal, but it could be a picking meal that you've ever had or you want to have. That's like on the bucket list, or where you did something like a bang bang, which is like you're talking about multiple thousands that you just feel horrible about yourself because it's delicious, but also great company. Something about it's just right with the diet, all the things like you should be doing. Throw it all.
Several times. Yeah, I don't do this anymore, but entire time I was a postdoc for 5 years, and entire time I was a tenured professor for 5 years, I basically followed the slow carb diet, which people picked out, but it worked really well. It was basically some like good animal protein, fish and meat, things like that. Because slow carb is like low glycemic, rather than vegetables, no dairy, no. Anyway, but then one day, no, it wasn't low carb, but it was low glycemic, and I did that, and it worked really well just for energy levels because I wanted to train. And then one day you're supposed to do a full cheat day, and so I would what's used to 12 hours, but then it became 24. Start to refine day. I would, and that was when Costello was young, and we would do it together. I would get croissants, donuts. I would just do the full thing, and by the end of the day, you don't want to look at an item repulsed by. The only modification I made the next day, I would fast, avoid the gastric progressive. So I would do them on Sundays, and then Mondays I fast all day. By Tuesday, I felt pretty good. Sunday, Monday, just feel like you're sliding down the blood sugar faster.
Terrible idea.
No, at the time I enjoyed it. I love donuts, croissants, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting after stopping protocols. Now I just protocol. Now I basically intermittent fasting. I'm not really strict, but I'll start it around 11. 11, I usually train in the morning. My last bite is somewhere around here. I'm not. that's when I was doing it. And actually, a couple different ways. Or like try all the restaurants. And I think friend John Romanello did a marathon where they did a marathon 23 miles in 20 locations. I never that, but what? That's never again. A little bit of money. Things that guys do shit. And now I just try and eat well most days. What's interesting is about 12 to 14 months ago, I completely lost all appetite. I love saying and also, but lost all appetite. Put a donut in front of me with ice cream. It's almost, I don't know what happened. Probably this neuron habit. The sugar, the desire for that rush. What was most delicious croissant donuts? What the thing that there's a place I don't know if it's something called Little T's Bakery. They have croissants that make a lot of them bread and there when I was a sabbatical there. And you know, they're I get there's nothing like the bread in Paris. And but if you're in the Northwest, what do you do with the croissant? What do you do with the bread? Butter or is it? I don't eat them anymore. I don't have much of an appetite for them, even though they're not as sweet. But I'm always butter. Butter on the butter. No jam. I would never indulge. I have to actually be honest about this. Steak, bread, butter. I feel like butter. You're expecting fundamentals adding butter. Butter, it's like a meat version of ketchup. Well, there we diverge. Bread, just a cracker is just a. Also, just the cracker and the bread is texture. It's funny and the butter straight. I got. Well, so I put a little bread underneath this, not because I'm low carbs. Otherwise, it's like pasta is sauce. It's interesting. Like non-bread of bread. I've had a lot of soul searching, which part of Indian boy bread or is it all sauce? Whatever one calorie like not bread. I don't know how very intense. The density of calories is high. Any barbecue, I would say, some of it. I do love, I do love. My dad's Argentine. In Argentina, like sausage, half of it, and it's not just, it's not just. Sometimes it's very only generally that's how I think about it. Is that is it a lot of stuff? Chicken, like what? Chicken, nothing else. That that gives you 3 days. Well, your stuff. You got microbiome almost by fast. A lot of people think, oh, faster than microbiome. Quash your microbiome. However, when you start eating, the microbiome comes back better than it was before. People don't know, start getting tired on the call. They're kind of pulling stuff out. Belts,
calories, 10,000.
You know what's interesting? There's some theology around this. The reason is not that you're burning that many calories, it's that when you exercise in water, even warm water, transfer greater, you burn far more calories. And again, here I'm admittedly looking at from knowledge that was passed on to me by so, but I checked it out, and it's absolutely true. If you exercise in water, it's not really cold water. Your caloric needs to go way up, which is why you get out of the pool, you're off.
And for fans of the Human Lab podcast, not a fan of what we're doing, but you would probably chuckle at the fact that Andrew just cited that statement. Because you're so good at, I don't know how your memory works. The only person whose memory is better than Joe Rogan.
My colleagues joke, you know, PubMed sort of scrolls through my mind. Also in science, as you know, attribution is new. And I think it's interesting because now spending a lot of time on social media, attribution is not as common. And but in academia, you learn really early on that if you give a talk about your data and you cite all it does is make you look better, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in social media and elsewhere in the business sector, it's almost like citing other people. People feel take away some credit. All it does is place you in something work. So I have genuine and tremendous respect for him. He's been about 10 years ahead on a huge number of health-related things and other things. Extremely kind person, very thoughtful person. So it's a pleasure to shine light on others.
Yeah. Well, I actually push back. I know there's a culture of if you write a paper standing on the shoulders of giants, awful thing. But there's also a culture of not giving credit strongest idea that states kind of or imply the original. There is a culture of kind of not celebrating others. I think people get most competitive in all walks, but especially in science, the closer they get, not because it's gone. And so there's this dance. You know, there's a few researchers. Each of the individual little things you work on. If you're studying a particular kind of ant, you know that other asshole that also is studying that particular ant, and then you're not going to often give credit to brilliant ideas that other researchers are doing. And I think one of the things you discovered and part of your nature and why it's great have an audience and inspire others to do things. You celebrate that and study. Great. Everybody wants to raise softball. But that initial instinct is like, what is it, Borat? Like my neighbor gets a toaster, I get a bigger toaster.
Yeah, that mindset. It's not that I'm names, but yeah, I get great pleasure from sharing that, and I think that at the end of the day, as strong as your community, the one I now think these are all just knowledge. I see a paper, I love it. Rarely do I think, I wish we had done. I usually think it's fantastic. Now I can just else.
And by the way, you mentioned PubMed and barbecue. I should mention that I got a chance to hang out with Rick Rubin. Thanks to you. He's a friend of yours and connection. That was a huge gift to my spirit. I guess he's truly special. And there's a lot I could say about why. I don't know how you met him, but I could also just mention on the PubMed that it's so interesting talking to him about and both on the podcast and privately because you mentioned the song. He does this thing with like finds that song album and he steps through the album. You can see the brain like, stepping through individual songs to find that song in the album. That kind of look up process, self mentally in that space of like, okay, whatever the album is, it's not just produced all the encyclopedia. So it also the thing I really love about it is something like a calmness. It's okay to close your eyes, place yourself in the place where that album was recorded, feeling of that album, like that silence, go there together. The Alice in Wonderland, go there. Good Rick, minus the spirit is epic, right? How'd you get? Yeah, well, Rick, I'm very blessed. For, Rick and I got introduced to a common friend during the pandemic, and we started time together, just talking about things that just happened. I'm not a musician. I have no musical ability or talent. I have a good ability to memorize lyrics, and I love lyrics, and I love poetry. So I asked him a lot of questions about musicians that I happen to love and worked with those. So stories about musicians, talked to themselves, and then eventually we formed a friendship live, and then we started spending time together in person. And as you now know, Nick, in addition to all his incredible accomplishments, has an incredible understanding of how to get the brain and body out, willing to allow himself, the incredible artist, get into the best state of craft. And so if he needs to be quiet with his eyes closed there for more, we'll do that. He has to allow himself to get into states. And it's really inspired me to think about mind as something that we all love to do, which is focus, creative, but to actually ratchet through the challenging steps that to figure out what regular basis to get the proper state. It's not just going to come from a cup of coffee, a lamp of those things, but it's also going to be teaching oneself how to get into the proper state. Yeah, you did an episode on hypnosis. I think it's kind of self-hypnosis. Yeah. Hypnosis is a context, very alert, and he has a number of these different practices. Enjoyed a lot of discussions about. In fact, I introduced Rick to a friend of mine who's a surgeon and neuroscientist, and he's friendly. You know, Rick is one of these people that defies definition. Incredibly kind, incredibly private person. Respectful of that, but and then of course podcast. So when I learned that, I it made natural sense. I know he really and talk about you a lot. And, of course, in a positive dedication into mind and going this that has transformed my around life. Like for instance, before doing a very long podcast recording, the ones which several hours or 6 hours before, I realized that there's a certain brain state associated with it. So I have to really limit the kind of interactions I have. I actually walk in out my neighborhood. People think I'm crazy, but I live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of crazy creatives anyway. Say you're not crazy. Well, at least not right. Yeah. But you know, getting into the state of mind is something that we all imagine. But Rick really work. Maybe linger on that a little bit more. You process how you get. I have to admit, for podcast, I don't know. Like there's a lot of anxiety because, like whatever, if I have to pack, if I have to set up stuff. Luckily, a few minutes. Shut up a few minutes. You're an academic, right? Maybe right on time. But rest is meant. And on top of that, I had to set up microphones in front of them. I know a lot about microphones. Those very Rick Rubin, right? Details really matter, right down to relationship. Yeah, and so of course, because but he also said, you know, he's professional. You like me feel like an artist. Like the microphone decisions make.
Well, I have to say, and it's actually come up in our conversation, but I mean, you are an artist. And actually, Joe Rogan, once I heard him talk about podcasts, he's always trying to get better at it, and he describes podcasts, right? And it's a certain communication, and there's a cadence and a rhythm that when it's working, it really transfers information. Not, doesn't. Obviously, Joe just himself has tapped into that that allows and makes so many people excited to hear him talk.
Well, in his case and in general, part of the art is using the world as a audience to change who you are.
One quote that I've seen out there where he says, I'm like about himself, he says, I'm like the fish that got through. There's no stage version of right how he is person, how he is out in the world. And of course, there's nuance to life, right, and it's different relationships, of course. But it's true. I mean, we've had the great fortune of time with out away from the microphone, so to speak.
Can you speak to that process? You mentioned the walking and yourself. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I try and a couple of things. First of all, when I was a kid, I had a pick. When I was 5 or 6, I built up a tension in my throat, and I would do this grunting. If I get very tired, I start to do this. We actually know that it's related to ganglion circuits for go, no go. You got an accelerator and a brake, basically, in your neural circuitry. And kids with Tourette's and OCD, the brake doesn't work quite as well. And so one thing that happens is if I wake up in the morning and if I'm well rested, well, if I'm not well rested, I do a hip or yoga nidra in order to recover. That works really well. But then once I'm into the process of preparing the podcast, I've already gone through my notes. I know what I want to say more or less. And then I take a walk, and I try to no phone. I try to assess whether or not my energy is high or too low. Podcast is push out a lot of material, but then there's times when down. And so what I do, I don't have nerves. What I do actually is I will recite the lyrics of songs for about 10 minutes, songs I love, while I walk out loud.
It calms you and what is it?
I think it gets my vocal warmed up, and it also
sing or
I often and fortunately years. And as I do this, I start to evaluate whether or not I'm straining to get the words out, or whether or not I'm straining to make them slow enough that I. There are days when I have so much energy that I'm trying to speak faster than I should. There are other days when I'm tired and up with it. And so what I try and do is assess that and adjust the transmission, the RPMs, so that I can quickly. Okay, so I can change the voice. And in the classroom, as you know, because you're classroom, as you teach in the classroom, you want to slow down. Teacher knows you turn to the whiteboard or chalkboard and start writing. Ready? Give you a break, and then you turn around and you fire back the machine gun fire of information, and then you slow down or you underline. With the podcast, you don't have that opportunity. There's no visual. So what I try and do is always get my voice warmed up and make sure that right. And then I also do this thing with my vision in panoramic vision when I walk, which is very calming. And then I actually start to remind myself of the podcast missions. I remind myself and I feel comfortable saying the word publicly now about science. I think
love, beauty.
Yeah, love and
Dr. Andrew Huberman.
Love and but also dark. You're talking about the live streaming podcast. You have to adjust. You have to address the shadow also. Shadow side. But I think about I want to be in biology, and then I check my emotional state. I want to make make sure that I'm not angry about anything. And certainly if I am, then I'm going to set it aside for the podcast because it's not a place for my whatever I'm. I also really start to feel into the parts of the research and the things like that I really, because that's the part of me that I like the most, frankly. And on the podcast, if there's a paper, like for instance, we have a paper podcast coming out about sauna, but some other things. And researching this, I learned so much about the heat shock proteins and the use of sauna in Finland for increasing growth hormone, but also for treatment of mental illness. And I realized I fell in love with literature, the literature. True pioneers for this work. Now everyone's in the sauna. So the way the experiments were done were amazing. With all these Finnish people, thermocouples up their rectums, measure temperature, swimming. It's hilarious and great. So I start to think about it, and I think, I just start to really access my love of work. And then when we finally sit down, Rob and I, and record, I just sort of want to just bask in sharing it. Just like a little version of me when I was 6 or 7, I used to spend all weekend in the encyclopedia, book of world records, making my mother drive me places. I had this obsession with traveling when I was a kid. Well, and then on Monday I would from giving lecture in class. Yeah, so that's basically what it is. I just try and access that childlike energy, and so I want to be clear. The goal is always to make the information interesting, clear, actionable, and it's also surprising. That's basically the process. But yeah, I'm sitting, talking, and getting. And I used to feel very sheepish about sharing anything I've ever shared it. But Rick was the one who encouraged me to find a process that works, develop that process, and not let anything get near them. People in my personal life know that, and when it's time, it's like I don't care what else is going on. I'm moving into that brain state.
There's probably a process like that for anything your life take seriously. People that perfected athletes, Olympic level athletes, they have to have a process.
And I think Tiger Woods actually taught self-hypnosis quite young, and self-hypnosis often during his tournaments. Sometimes success and other times less.
Is there other places in life that you use kind of a protocol, like a mental protocol to get ready?
Many of the best areas of life are their own form of hypnosis, right?
True.
You know that you're in hypnosis. If, for instance, you're in a movie and something happens, it's the emotional lift without being self-conscious about it. Yes, I think that one thing that we've tried to do in our house is around the time try and set a state that food isn't just something that we just throw down our throats. And I'm fortunate that my partner cooks really well, and so I try and for the space to do that. And that's a whole thing. We're getting a state. And
For the cooking.
for the cooking,
preparation of all
I can see the way she approaches the whole thing, the pleasure of serving it, and I'm an eater, not a cooker. But
they're both there. You could be a very good eater. Like there's something about anything better in the world than that. Especially with family, being around a table, warmth of that. I don't know the cold outside of the cool world, not touching return. And if I mean,
you grew up eating.
yeah. I mean,
down, no television.
No, well, I just really have television period outside of meals. So my time was spent stray cats outdoors running around playing soccer.
Imagine like dirt or concrete lot, very high-rise building, playing soccer, in like athletic gear that you only see in Europe. You know how like you come to the States and you wear their athletic gear. You go to Europe, you see soccer culture, but you see athletic gear that you just don't see anywhere else.
That's it. I mean, I'm pretty poor, so first of all, I was always wearing my brothers. They were like old, like my favorite things were American things
thing about it, I feel like in Europe they wear sweaty carry like the guys. But
yeah, that's like fam. That is okay. Like kid. Like the fucking football players that like they were in a league of some kind, get uniforms, or they somehow. I always thought anyone who had nice had to do something bad to get it. That was my way world because uh, I guess I didn't understand how it's possible. Most of us were surrounded by people, and that life was beautiful and simple. And it's like, why do you escape that life? You still admire the cool, like got McDonald's, like what kind of world come invented this? Fascinating child's perspective, capitalism.
Yeah, but the fact you ate dinner together is really interesting. My when I was an adolescent, then total fracture of any family structure. Prior to that, we ate dinner together every day. I was expected to know how to use my knife to work. You know, it was like a very structured thing. I don't know if we do that. If I ever have kids, we're going to do that. Actually, on the way over here, I was thinking, you know, I really want a lot of kids. I want to, and Lex has, and I have kids like this. I pit them against each other. Which is my chance of
the long game,
soccer, right? They want to be engineers, or
yeah,
they want to be biologists. But in all seriousness, I look forward to the day that our play together.
Yeah, I think there's something family dinner, the ritual family dinner, but also more preparation on the weekend, holiday. In Russia, I think that's actually I find for the most part. America is there was neighbor, there was a broke walls between families. That's no common. Like kind of regular character sitcom almost. You know, if you watch a sitcom, it's never just the family. There's always like other characters that bursting in the door, bursting in the door.
I'm gonna start doing that. Just to make you feel at home. Just start showing up. Like, yeah, I know where you.
I think people want to respect Michael Mouse, and I think people want to respect each other's privacy or something like that. And I think we all get and you know, like it kind of work dinner together, or you know, he is a thing you schedule work. We get busy, a lot of stuff going on, but if it's part of a ritual, a part of the culture, all of broken down it, and then you realize like that's like later looking back, that's what life's about, career, whatever.
In academia, changed in the last few years, of course. But one of the great joys was professors would stop by your office, your lab. Nobody set up an appointment. The guy, when I was a professor in San Diego, a guy named Harvey Carney, for the national. He, he world's expert in the evolution of vision and evolution of brain in general. And he'd show up in my lab and he'd just start talking about stuff. And I mean, a pure encyclopedia. And then at some point, you'd say, Harvey, I gotta go. You'd have to pick him up, right? But this guy, he's on David. So anyway, actually, David Kleinfeld, a student, went on to create a head cartoon, and one of them is David, professor. Now people can look him up. And David's one of those guys who just walk into your office, you just start talking, and so there's kind of a family like Cheers or Seinfeld or one of those shows where somebody just walks in. Yeah, I think you and I both share a love of podcast. I should say for the guest episode, the preparation is completely different. But there, I don't do it myself. State, I just try to make sure the guest taken care of, and I can work out the questions I'm going to ask. I actually really like the episodes far more than I like doing solo ones. Psychologically, I just like learning from someone directly. Yeah. Asking an expert about something, like sitting here with
it's interesting because I do think prepping for interview process like the valuable. I have to think about that. I think when you do a conversation several hours, especially when it's a high stakes, it's not like 9 hours chatting and
although you never know. Knowing you will probably you like to ride the edge.
oh boy.
There are a number of topics that I just enjoy, and my response to those is always that I have a lot of opinions about that, but not a lot. But whereas you become far braver in terms of the topics people encounter, and some of your guests have been right. Yeah. Some of them are people that not a lot of that a lot of people don't like. And sit down and maybe it's jiu-jitsu.
I don't know. It's tricky. One of my goals this year is to talk to people. A lot of people.
And here I am.
Well, people in prison, right, major political leaders have been doing a lot about how to talk to really difficult, controversial figures, bind together something deeply honest about their nature, about the ideas they have about the world, like reveal something real. And some people, you have to be very careful. Some people are very good at hiding inside themselves. That's something I think about a lot. I think about dictators in the past and put myself in mindset. How do you be themselves? I think that to me, you kind of spoke to that, but a great conversation when one where you discover that it's not just. So I love that. My favorite thing that you mentioned was allowing your curiosity to get excited and learn, but also them to discover something about themselves, about their ideas together. That discovery, and sometimes it's like we don't see it in the moment, but the audience hears it. It's weird to say. Like I'll compare it to when you're a musician, you're playing with other musicians. You lose yourself in the moment. Yeah, it's all working right. It's working. You don't really uh, see the big picture impact of it's working right. Actually, feels like that's where the audience can see that. Obviously, uh, for me, an interviewer, I have to empathize, understand. I have to put myself in that mindset. Put yourself in that mindset. You really have to become that. You have to understand the people inside of you. Like you can't just think if somebody's in power and has that power to abuse others. You can't just be a high person to understand. You can't just be a journalist asking generic questions. You have to put yourself in a place where you're somebody who's a lot of power. Slowly use that power. What is that person become? Who are you? I have to plug myself into the moments in my life in the past where I've been angry at and where I've been cruel because I was angry. Way. But then you magnify them as scale. I have to go there. That's very human. I have to look at another person across the table from me and well, you're there and then you had more opportunity to and and then um and then where I have to plug myself into places where I've been. Okay, imagine I can go where I was cruel to others and was unaware of it. So I was in a mind space where I was thinking I'm doing good and I was again never got an opportunity at a large scale. But all of us have done it at a small scale. And I plug myself into that and then we're here. Do if it's somebody who's in prison, somebody who's a dictator, face all of us have the capacity to do that. So I have to imagine myself being able to do that and then we're here together in that. happens when you empathize. Those moments of discovery are beautiful. But they also happen in science. You have a conversation, you realize, talking to people from constantly realize beautiful
together on this element of evil and sociopathy. That Jung had this notion that we have all things inside us, and that we all have the capacity, good or evil, etc. But I have the fortune of working with somebody who has understanding of psychiatry, but also psychoanalysis theory, and he said recently, whether or not all people have all things inside them is debated in the psychology community and in the neuroscience community. It's a matter of philosophy, but there are certain, not many, but there are certain people, they've actually lived out many versions of philosophy in the first person. And so those are unique. They tapped into these things, as you mentioned, as a minor level, impacting people negatively at that scale. So being able to access those parts of themselves, you've been willing to step into that. My podcast is not one in which we get down to those matters. But yes, you never know. We might do an episode on narcissism. The other thing that from a conversation, a friend, a lot of years in special operations intelligence, that if you look at the past, at some point you will come to understand why they are. But you have to draw the red line someplace. And what he was referring to was the fact that, at least in the eyes of certain communities, deserve to be eliminated as a consequence of their actions, right? Regardless of what drove them to those actions. It gets right down to the line between nature, nurture, neuroscience, and the law and justice. Complicated. I can think of a number of people that I would love to hear you interview, and here I'm not feeling the reasons why, but except for the fact that I think he needed to bring out the components of the conversation that other people have not been able to for Holmes. One of the most mysterious and yet disliked people on the planet. Sort of synonymous with deception. I don't know if there have been any of her, the whole thing. I haven't followed that case. I listened to the book and I followed it a little bit because it's happening, right? Theranos is right up the road. The building's still there. Interesting. It's some of the most premier real estate in Silicon Valley, but it's very hard to tell murder, or feel like the Theranos building is that building. That would be really interesting. I'd love to hear that.
One of the most interesting dark human beings science.
Yeah, and then people would say, was it even science, right? It might have been deception, it was one part deception, one part whole thing mixed in. Clearly that there were so many factors impacting what happened. I think the big difference between Theranos and that story and some of the other stories about Silicon Valley where people promised a lot more than they could deliver, they were promising things that were directly related to health and healthcare. People were taking blood tests, understanding that data they were getting important information and making real world decisions on the basis of that. Whereas if you remember when the iPhone first came out and Jobs was live and the phones were dropping balls and held it away, and his response was what let people, hey folks, it's the phone, like don't get them worked up. But people understand it was a very high standard. She was sort of, I don't know, so it seems like she sort of adopted this idea that wrong a bunch of times, except the allegations are true. That a number of the things that they were doing were back into the point about the phone. Well, it depends on the call. If you're calling 911, and it's not right. But in the case of blood tests, I think that the Theranos is super interesting. A number of people from major universities and from government that both trusted her and a number of interest in the neuroscience of narcissism, the opposite. Yeah, maybe we'll do a podcast together. Yeah, I mean, like in the kind of early '90s version of yeah. You can use your voice because your voice is much more receptive.
Back up. Well, it'd be interesting from a scientific perspective. With sociopath or psychopath, how to reveal something real about them. I think that requires not just, well, I don't know what that requires. That requires the same skills it takes to be a good therapist.
Right, and therapists won't work. Don't feel progress being made. Some therapists will work with as because wealthy ones they often they want more money. I think most therapists are good, but there's some that will do it just the same way lawyers would criminals, right? Um, because they're criminals. There are certain domains of psychiatry that are attractive to others, right? Borderlines are interesting, I should just mention, because they have this phenomenon. So in the world of psychology, the idea that being neurotic is actually the goal. The idea that you could, feel something and then work a lot to have some sort of place, but that's not destructive. That's actually a healthy state to be in, provided destructive. Psychotic, truly delusional reality. The idea is that borderlines split, intermittently split, psychotic and neurotic. That's why it's called beautiful work by Melanie Klein describes, which I'm just now kind of delving into. But so borderline is like I love you, I love you, I love you, and then they and you that object. Borderlines are challenging for psychologists because of the splitting, right? Schizophrenics are challenging because of the attachment from reality, and narcissists are challenging because they're often so charming that therapists.
I believe you mentioned Carl Zexeroff. We'll talk
He's
about
definitely not a narcissist. He's one of the more humble people, but he is.
Thanks again to you. You've connected us. I had the pleasure of having a conversation with him. You had a conversation with him. I really enjoyed it. The podcast. You guys come from the same science, from the same place, maybe different journeys,
And levels. We were postdocs together. Carl is the Michael Jordan, the Wayne Gretzky, 5 children, amazing marriage to it. Also an amazing scientist, his wife Michelle, in our neurology department. Incredible thinker, writer, very kind person, humble. Sorry, Carl, I'm out here, but Carl, despite being at the highest level of engineering and the practice of psychiatry, is often literally a coat closet with a small table. When you meet with Carl, if you manage to meet with him, it's very hard to get to. Walk in, sit down as if you're through some interrogation, some spy novel, and he'll ask you, what are you most excited about lately? And I've got 11 minutes. And that's a big Carl. That busy. But he doesn't have the office. Kids, the thing, all that. He's kept orders it. I asked him why he's working light, light, the light, small thing. Here you are in the dark. What gets me state of mind? But I went very rich. Not that at all the same, but very similar that he figured out the physical space that is the optimal space life. And it's very unusual. Right? If I don't have a window, I kind of freak out. I can be here for a while where it's black, floating in space. Um, but I find that amazing that these people that are operating actually deprive themselves of information. They're not sitting there with a secretary coming in offering them espresso every 5 minutes. No, no, no. That's New York neuroscience. New York neuroscience mafia is kind of famous for having all the, the opera and this and that, and they enjoy lifestyle. There is one. There definitely are. They know who they are.
For people who don't know, Andrew Huberman is from the West Coast, and now he's starting wars with the science mafia.
Well, they do amazing science. They love their lifestyle, and that's one. They
space you're in. Visually, yes, certain things like
First of all, when you do them remotely, I always feel like I'm you only get the coordinates of the last one, and always get the sense that there are that are recording.
there's something about I have I think part of that part of creating a feeling is having robots having a mind of their own because that was guests and other humans that interact with that's my mind, an engineering mind where things come to life, whatever that is, art, robots, or art. About that. Well, for me, yes, and I'm also thinking about yes, just homes. One person, a couple, one person, but I think I would like to talk to Lane that
Right, right before now I know why. Yeah, I mean, and assuming that she right was under no version of the story where she is doing and is quote unquote good person in my mind, right? And yet I think there's tremendous interest in understanding what led her to do all that.
So
At least for some people.
let me say a couple of things. So one is at a high level, let me say that her current story is she's
Oh, ooh,
Jeffrey. I think I'll just leave that there as her ideas based on the nature of truth, the nature of the mind. Imagine, folks, if you went into a room person like that. Let me also say I never or I rarely mention names. I'm talking about having significant progress in already securing that because people sometimes ask me about I do not bring them up like I regret, but I'm not sure I know how to but people are just I haven't been preparing. I only start preparing serious when it's done. And one of the things that I mentioned is a conversation about without having police rated me just and how I would have a somebody like that. But that's not range. I like maybe things on to not so much. I mean, I would watch that episode. Uh, well, you did an episode, former cyber criminal turned stateside, right? I think there was a segment in there. I mean, a segment in there where he talked about feeling a lifetime
on this idea had behaved right, and it created an internal conflict. Quite charming bastard stories of perfect. Um, especially I really enjoyed his discussions about how he had people who without serving to them and back. It's very complicated. This is the reason I went into science. At some level, more about facts than judgment. And I don't know that I have the then judgment away from the kind of level concept. My initial reaction to like, if it's true, like the Glenn Maxwell poems and other is one of just bullshit. But that could also reflect the fact that I'm not as neurological as somebody that can spin all the plates of empathy, forgiveness, but also um, that's work. That takes think about that's three brain circuits having to work in parallel. That's the difference between chess or checkers. No, so one is like mine and cross. You're very interview, very good. But complicated. I'm not being objective. I'm not good at complicated. I'm working very hard, getting better at it, and not about podcasting or life. Anxiety, actually, you really, I never, ever, and I think there are people that they feel anxious, and yet you're steady. I don't appear incredibly calm. Proven is yet when you first meet him, this is intimidatingly calm, but as you get to know him a bit, you realize that the kindness and the generosity that you send is real. But yeah, I would never in a million years have guessed that you get anxious.
Can I just make another quick comment? Come up Andrew, maybe you've already gotten it. But having mentioned Vladimir Zelensky, Ghislaine Maxwell, there's a natural question of like how is he, what works for him? What does he have other this? I ask myself, when I look in the mirror, just somebody who kind of, I want to ask the same question, like, well, I usually ask it the following way, like, how the fuck am I so bad? Am I a robot being controlled by somebody else? How is this my life? What is happening? It really does feel like a story. Let me just speak several things. First of all, I have no boss. I know of, am I controlled by any intelligence agency of any nation? You're gonna get you a dog that I can talk to. I'm scared of a dog. Next time I'm just gonna bring a puppy. That's all you need here. And you'll never see me. I love dogs so much, but I was also surprised that maybe I have never talked to him. Very interesting.
That you're aware of. They're very good at communicating with
right.
people.
But I've been very suspicious on this exact point. That's the downside of kind of being an introvert, having anxiety about social interaction, and having so much love thrown your way because you connect over podcasts. Podcasts have a powerful way of connecting people. People come with you love that I really love, that I appreciate. But I wonder, like, exactly this question, like, Russian accent talking to me. It showed me so much love.
Well, because sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but it's what we do, and it's a sign of interest. By the way, sometimes, yeah, I have a colleague at Stanford, and she said, interruption 75% is the sign of real interest in the person, if nothing else. Well, you're very lovable. Well, but I mean, I learned about hedgehog in the fog. When I learned, you're very lovable. People love you because you're lovable.
I love love. Okay, so 100%. And I mean, people are so. I go hugs. I love people.
But do you want a family? Are you eventually?
100%. I mean, I take what you said as a challenge. In terms of having a family with kids and they do jiu-jitsu, obviously, and make miserable for your failures as a father, and be a great thing. Build up an army of good. But yes, I would love a family. I would love to have children. But I just want to finish that point. I'm nervous about the way people. What you're seeing is, of course, comes here. Who I am, I seem to be, and this is how like the world seems to work. You just try to be yourself, try to find yourself. Maybe the better way to say it, and just be that. Be kind. Work your ass off, and say f you to anybody that wants to control you, or to tell you what to be free, and then put love out there in the world. And doors open. Karma thing. How the hell, my friends, how the hell did I get KFC barbecue with right? You got that barbecue.
That I know has very high standards. Bad restaurants don't last long.
That barbecue Thompson.
Oh yeah, barbecue. I would also add that whether or not you realize it or not, you take tremendous risk. We come from the same original community, academic science, right? And to be at MIT and to start posting lectures online, risky, right? I was third or fourth in on terms of podcasting. Gone on Rogan times, Claire had gone on there. Especially before the pandemic, many academics and scientists talking publicly. Way. So you took tremendous risk, right? You took tremendous risk, always wearing that jacket at the time, right? The only time I haven't seen that truly World Jiu-Jitsu. And I hear I'm being generous to myself saying it's World Jiu-Jitsu. Thank you, front of it. That was it was great fun, and I
thank you for doing that. To have a beginner's mind.
Admittedly, I have not been taking the classes, but I'm going truly. Especially small chance to find myself in a lot. Sure. But
if you're out in San Francisco, you should train with Mark Zuckerberg. He started.
Oh yeah.
You guys get.
Sure.
I mean, he's actually episode perhaps is fascinating.
So tremendous risk as an academic. So I do believe that when one takes intelligent risk, you crash your career, all sorts of self-destructive, destructive things. You take risks and they paid off. And you take different risks at different stages. But I don't throw around the word admiration lightly. I admire that you one of your early very hard to get.
You should definitely.
I can't wait to right before the pandemic couldn't travel, but you do have this incredible ability and them to trust you, know you, and I think through your authenticity, and I think the fact that you go places where people haven't been before. Saying about pioneers, how do you spot the pioneers? The arrows in their back. So that's the and that's actually a quote that I lifted from Terry Sig. Sources again. Terry's you talk to Terry. He's a is that's a real thing, and to do it with integrity and rigor, that's a real thing. And so, yeah, I'm complimenting you, and I hope it lands. But I also hope that you hear that and understand that it's one thing to do what other people are already doing boldly. It's a whole other thing to launch an entire art form of venue, and you do that. And you didn't write a book. Something you didn't go write a book. A lot of academics went online. Jordan Peterson, another controversial case, did it too. All those lectures. So, it's karma, and also having the mind for which there is no prior example to hold on to while you go through those headwinds.
Really fascinating thing. Actually, a lot of people think about Andrew Huber. Like the reach of a podcast is pretty fascinating. It's not the numbers of people. I don't know if that's important at all. Is important is like the depth of connection you have with certain people. It really moves them. Like good, and like they really get. There's a lot of big Andrew Huber podcasts. Get you. It's not just the science. Stuff to Costello. Picture of the scientist that finds beauty in biology and loves you for it. Because it on television at the time, I followed that Amanda Knox story for years. And I don't watch television, but whenever I would travel on the airplane, I would find myself getting wrapped in, like, locked up abroad. Like, and these things where you're terrified to travel anywhere, let alone primary. Prison, dramatic. I mean, her case got a ton of interest, and then she went and then was a Washington, and has talked quite openly about how people built it, should you only go by what law determines. But the world is fascinating. I'm guessing about a third of people have already decided this person is. Why would you ever give them an offer? About a third of people, I think, are open or interested in learning more about them. And then I think that the remaining third, kind of the third the category that I put myself in, what can I learn about people and myself, even in my revulsion, right? What can I learn? Well, yeah, what can I learn about myself from this conversation? Somebody that I like to. I'm not talking about Amanda here. I'm talking about the other people I'm talking about that I can't relate to. Like hearing conversations about people you cannot relate to is informative. Otherwise, your whole mind becomes. There's an interesting thing also at ever since the war in Ukraine broke out. One of the questions I was asking, and it's not dramatic, it's very simple, honest question, that I think a lot of journalists that operate in the wars or documentary filmmakers that everybody's got a chance to be have to be honest with themselves. Are you willing to put at risk your life?
What are you willing to die?
What are you willing to die for? It sounds very dramatic, but whenever risk goes up, I mean, I don't know. You ask that if you want to take out a trip off to space on a commercial space flight. You have to. Are you willing? Are you willing to die for this journey? Now the odds there are really small.
I just watched Apollo again. Great movie, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to space.
Afraid of heights?
No, I'm not afraid of heights. I just feel like a terrible place to go.
Well, first of all, death anywhere is great.
Yeah, although I have a song teed up in my phone. If the plane starts to go down,
Yeah,
I'm gonna spend the last day. It's a rare song. Nobody knows it. It's a song off a B track of my favorite band, Rancid, called "The Sentence," and nobody, and I love it, and I listen to it almost every day. The band is called Rancid.
yeah.
Relatively love those guys. Love and the song is "The Sentence." can only find it on a insider outtake. If you don't know how to decipher Tim Armstrong, probably won't years, but because it's very, very fast. But if the plane ever goes, anytime there's turbulence, I put that time it's time to go out like this. I don't want to drift off personality. Just like I wouldn't want to drown or.
But on a plane is okay.
Well, on a plane, and there's truly nothing you can do. Might as well at least listen to your favorite songs.
I'll probably go with my mind, and just the calmness, just back, like the playing at the Titanic.
I didn't know you were a Pixies fan.
Not so much a Pixies fan. Actually, I should say, I just that was the Where's My Mind chosen song from Fight Club at the end when the building coming down or something like that. So that there's certain songs, it's just right. The collapse of human civilization. You're calmly appreciating, like, that's just it. How good this stuff is. At any moment it can end.
I love how we both have Death in Lives.
Yeah.
Soundtrack.
It's just a question when you're an academic doesn't come up.
Right.
That's all. That's
yeah. There are some academics that are bold and brave. It's not a phenotype. Being bold and brave in the physical world is not a common phenotype of academics. I mean, the great neurologist, one of my, I don't have many heroes, but Oliver Sacks is a true hero. I mean, people think of him as a writer, but he was foremost a neurologist, and tremendous pushback from the neurology community doing his books and articles. He has a great biography called On the Wonderful Documentary that came out about it. Actually, kind of a collector of but tremendous. He was accused of horrible things until Hero and Robin Williams.
Amazing movie, by the way. People don't. Yeah. They seem to not say great things about the movie. I love that.
Amazing, and only once he became famous from that academic work started any kind of attention. Invited back to NYU. The New York Neuroscience Mafia. And yes, you know who you are, and some of them are actually coming up. Yeah. They are.
Dude, I think we talked offline about starting a mafia. The bat just fight off whatever's going on in me. But still at MIT, so I don't know. Boston is different than New York.
Yeah, so I have tremendous respect for science done in New York. They are excellent scientists. It's just a very different culture than West Coast. And the personalities, the personality.
Tremendous respect for the mob.
And the personalities are a bit more grandiose. However, because of some of the science culture in the last few years, around scandals, that sort, they've been forced to tamp down some of their personality, or at least their outspoken personality. And I actually think it reveals something really important in people in science. It used to be the case that you check your personality. Richard Feynman's a good example. If he did today what he did then, bongo drumming on the Caltech, and he did working out theorems in strict gloves, and he would have lost his job in the moment, right? So that kind of behavior isn't celebrated anymore. It's actually punished. And I'm only half kidding about this mafia, but because I now exist in multiple realms, I can say, again, admiration and respect, but I will say that it's important that people in science and curious about science understand that you can have any personality provided that you're ethical and respectful of science and do well, right? There are true bench scientists that just want to be at the bench. There are people that just want to be in their office, people that really enjoy public, and there are people that love meetings, and people that hate crowds. And so there's a place for everybody, truly a place for everybody. I would like to be able to shine light on the fact that you can have a shy personality, an outgoing personality, and all of those can have excellent careers. But you have to find the community, right? The reason I like Stanford is that Stanford is very much about the future. We have no prize winners, we have winners, all that stuff. and their names are on walls and polished in great work. But most of what we hear about them is about what's happening now and what could happen next. It's really about the future. Whereas when I've spent time at other things, you hear that, but there's a lot of cycling and regurgitation of how wonderful these larger companies can be. And the beauty of that is because of Silicon Valley, sure, they have prizes and delighted lines, but they're mostly interested in what they're going to. And so I kind of, not kind of, I really like the shift towards possibility as opposed to things that are steeped in tradition. I've never been to high tech or Oxford. I'm sure it's a wonderful experience. I'm also not sure what purpose it serves for the world, but I've never been, so I don't know what the conversations are, and so maybe and now I'm definitely.
You're definitely going to find it. But yeah, I'm the culture is the right one for you. That's what I like MIT. Spirit of it. Me, it's not about the past or the future. It's about just tinkering and having fun building cool stuff. Like the big ambitious projects there, maybe more on the kind of biology side. But like the engineering side, it doesn't matter. Let us do the coolest thing the world has ever built.
Whenever I'm in Kendall Square, I've seen they have those buildings there that actually the architecture of them.
That was pulled up, Sergey pulled up Elon Musk. Inspired by curiosity, that is what drives me. Let us expand the scale of consciousness and inspire to understand the universe. Look like three tweets in one, but curiosity. Curiosity for its own sake.
What's that saying? I think Dorothy Parker said, "Cure for boredom is curiosity. There's no cure."
And you need to celebrate. So let me just mention my lovely friends that I might celebrate different weirdness, celebrate weird characters. I sometimes get loving pressure from my lovely friends that I might tone down weirdness. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of leverage where I have completely resisted pressure. But I'm very sure that there's young faculty that with that subtle pressure would
Solve it.
not no.
Oh, they're from Boston.
Boston, that's right.
They're tougher than that.
That's right. But it's like nudging, with conformity that I think ultimately destroys or at least lessens the power of the kind of science when you encourage diversity in all of it, including the weirdness of ideas, the out of the box thinkers, including the flamboyant behavior online. Uh, how you educate, how you inspire. And people talk about freedom of speech, but it's not just like freedom of speech to say controversial things. It's also freedom of speech to like if you're for some reason fascinated, like Elon Musk, he talks about sex a lot. The guy puts sex memes up. Who cares? Like,
I feel like London basically.
there's no pressure. But there's a bunch of Elons in the academic world. There's a bunch of no, actually, sorry. Backtrack. Man deserves
Right, he's done.
he's a CEO of major company. He better believe he behave more like a CEO as opposed to a giggling schoolboy who's memes throughout the night. But that is him. That freedom. That's what freedom looks like. I talk to a lot of CEOs, and a lot of them feel like caged birds who long ago forgotten how to speak, quite honestly. Like shareholders, they come up with excuses for themselves. Why I have to go on. There's PR, there's marketing people, there's lawyers, there's all that kind of stuff. But final result, the beautiful weirdness of a leader, a creator of a scientist, that's all
Steve Jobs kept his job acting the way he did in the 20s and 30s days. He probably would have updated his so to speak.
But maybe
Screaming at employees. I mean, these are anecdotes, right? I call them anecdata. Treat them as data, but they're really just anecdotes. You don't know. I wasn't there. But I like the idea of authenticity without oversharing. Right? You're very authentic, but there are aspects to your life that I'm aware of that your audience will never be aware of, and there are aspects to your life that I'll never be aware of. And so you're still authentic. But
yeah, which one are you aware of? People are gonna wonder, like, what is
you think I'm a
sex dungeon? What is this?
But interesting. No, but I think that people lose careers on the basis of their thoughts, right? I mean, the chair of psychiatry at Columbia recently lost his position based on response to one of the most famous psychiatry departments in the world, and he put something out there that was very insensitive. And everyone that I talked to about it, gosh, that was very, very insensitive, not thoughtful at all, and lost his job, right? Or at least stepped down. I don't know this. So, I think I read someplace more than half of job loss to online gaming, right? I mean, not everyone can pull off it. Oh, by the way, congratulations.
No, we didn't get married. He proposed.
Yeah, got it.
Nice.
Yeah, right. Some people can get away. Oh yeah.
Thank you, sir. It has that.
Right.
So people are not aware. One of the days in April, tweeted that Tim Dillon asked me to get married. Yes, I think Tim said the wedding will be on street in Austin. Bring all of your weapons. Of course, totally inappropriate. This is. I was funny. I was like funny. Goes funny right away. But that's. I mean, anyone. I would like to get married with that guy. Do it in Austin. It'd be epic. It'd be like the wedding from November Rain. One of.
Oh wow.
Oh, Mr. I apologize.
Wow. Yeah, he broke tradition. So it sounds to me that you are a priest.
Freedom is really important, and that includes letting people who are hateful, letting people who are controversial have a platform. I'm not sure what that think because I also treasure quiet voices in the back of the room. And sometimes assholes silence those by being loud and obnoxious and so on. Way the talk. So I'm also a fan of creating community. Like being able to let people kind of build a community that's positive, loving, that's constant trolling, that's hateful. All those communities have a place to grow. Like the thing I've noticed is that hate, boy, people hate for a community of love easier than a community full of love. Overtake one. Kind of, I don't know exactly how, but they encourage the collision of we all have a platform and ability to speak to a large audience. But be careful to protect that. Like, uh, people have.
Yeah, I think in any great city, New York, which I love, by the way, have a brow. Want some brow shows on the Lower East Side. Want all. Don't necessarily. So, in terms of social media and then podcasting, and one thing that I decided very early, etc. But I have in my mind what I call classroom. again, there's certain established or certain etiquette classroom kinds of questions. There's always students that can ask a question when they monologue about their experience that really is a question. A lot of politely encourage that kind of question and kinds of questions that are likely to be. It's just more efficient that way. Not what. I try and respond to comments, and I try and also, there's also this really interesting question now. To restrict people information that they're saying, but I'm not in the habit of blocking only because of how other people are being. What I can, what I think other audience, right? Well, I don't know if he still does this, but a few years ago, he posted something. People ask him when you leave block because it wasn't consistent with what he was trying to say. Of course, but he's trying to get it. I think people should just understand that everybody's their own to, right? Just like in a classroom, there's certain and establish the etiquette within the context of the kind of class. A class about personality psychology, where you can have a very different range of conversation than class on memory theology. So I think social media is a great place for conversation, but it's not a great place for every conversation.
Yeah, and people that do get blocked, I never something I do very deliberately block or ignore. I never think poorly of them. I actually think if there's somebody that's saying hateful things about me, whatever, I always think positive. Just actually act. I think well of them, and a lot of people never again. Like I send them my love, and like I think fascinating beings, the fascinating stories. I'd love to have time to actually learn about their stories. Not enough time in the world. Think well of them and move on. Enjoy a delicious meal. People that are close to love on. And never adding to the negativity. Like even in the privacy of my own mind, I hate thought.
I love that. I know that it's true. One of the, I think, more toxic called evacuating. Feel something and try and evacuate it. Objective. Projection is fascinating. What you essentially transmute it into positivity, and then and transmute it. I think that people were better understood when they were or evacuative projection. Um, world would get much easier, but it requires a certain stable internal rudder, and when we're tired or sick or angry, we're hungry, excessively hungry. All of us are less good at it. I've been positively struck by the interaction, not just feedback, but my favorite thing as an educator in the classroom, but also on social absolute favorite thing is when the comments about other people are positively reinforcing people having conversations in the comments, and you realize this is like as an educator again, it's fun to teach, it's fun to talk to them, but real pleasure by a small group of people hearing them talk about it. That just feels joy, and because what it means is that ideas are reverberating their nervous system, and it's not just about feedback; it's about a parsing.
Do you actually post that we're going to talk on Instagram and I collected questions? Reminds me of I have to mention Mike Jones that question he asked, but also a gift he gave a while ago. Okay, but first, Rick,
Yes.
look at an Instagram page of Mike Jones Knife and check it out. Andrew gave me a gift, and that had a
out here in Austin, Lex, and say, I want to get a gift, but I didn't know where to get him. I contacted this guy, Mike Jones, that I learned about Joe Rogan. Because the first, remember in the days of Joe Rogan, afterwards, take a picture with Malcolm or the accident. I picked up the bushwhacker hatchet thing, and oh yeah, you check out like work, beautiful line. So, and I your episode after your grandmother, and mine in at home from if I get on that. So I love one of the podcasts first as a first time on there, and um, the old and yeah, I have this, I just have a great time with if you got your taking it on your travel.
Exactly. I actually keep it on the table, but I thought, but like,
You put it on their side.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, but it's not. It's quite badass. Craftsmanship is obvious, but also yeah.
It looks like it's designed to.
If I had like a family or something where people, there's nothing about this place that softens or kind of sense that this person might not murder me.
Did differently. Could use the
Way to put it. It's okay, let me, because it's my um, go to often. You mentioned reciting some lyrics. Go back then. Get a few songs that touch. Uh, this is one of those things I go to often. I'll read it to remind myself. It's advice from father to son, kind of mantra that it just killing. Use this opportunity one more time, read it. But keep your head all about you. There's on you. Trust yourself in all men doubt you, but make well doubting. Wait, not be tired by waiting, being lied about, or being hated. Don't give way to yet don't look good or talk lies. You can dream and not make dreams your master. Think, not make thoughts your aim. Triumph disaster. Treat them positive. Bear to hear the truth spoken. Twisted by nays, trapped for fools. Watch the keep life broken and split them up without. Make one heat while you're winning. It all. One turn, pigeon. Lose. Start again. Never the word about your loss. Force your heart to serve your term long after the gone. Nothing will talk with crowds, church, walk with common foes, or loving hurt. All men countless, but none. Really has forgiving that can the earth.
414-723.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. And engraved in it, yours is the earth. Everything that's
what to brave. And then finally I just pick something big called that my just as he said, incredible. That's
addiction. I'm curious to see where he goes. Vindication and those I mean, thought yeah, I mean, in some sense, your book have decades, right? If you take a half a year to write it, like the first book, like the first album, like journey. Uh, he uses poems, quotes, and they're beautiful book. It's a dreamy book. I think when people hear about neuroscience, they get a textbook or a protocols book or something. It's nothing like that. But it really is a deep dive into the mind of psychiatrists and research. I love that you love poetry. I mean, I saw you on Rogan. If and I'm not a very rabid, I'm a big reader, and I try and read poem once. Also, I think if it's a basketball, oh yeah. I mean, every third line in there, life well lived. That, that. What about the preparation for podcast songs? Find that interesting. Um, yeah, I've always been very limited. I don't understand. I've talked to Rick about this. But I don't really understand. I mean, I hear like it, but I don't really understand the structure of it. It makes a lot of sense. Does it touch your soul? I'm a huge Drummer fan, and I'm going to points for saying this, but I'm not a Clash fan. Oh, and so he obviously best known for the Clash song. Started off great, and then after about 30 seconds, my mind just kind of disintegrated into a bunch of mush. Whereas Joe Strummer is what he did as an adult, as I get later, and some of his solo work actually Rick produced more things. Rick pulled Johnny Cash especially out of retirement, died, and anything that Strummer did. There's a favorite song of mine by Strummer called "Burning Light." Find it. There is an album now where you find it Rain or something, which are a little bit more folky, not really. So I love that song. A bunch of songs by Rancid that I love. And then if I listen to instrumentals, I do. Um, I'll listen to classical piano. Some dreams that are made children. But it's not going to sound good as a poem. Like, yeah, so I mean, as he's done. Joe's voice. But yeah, that song "Burning Lights" from I Hired a Contract Killer. Pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, Joe is an amazing writer, right? I'm also a big Bob Dylan fan. Glenn Gould, classical piano, that had the Asperger's, and actually I can hear him grunting and reps like Dick. And I learned about Glenn Gould from Oliver Sacks. I'll listen to any number of things. It depends on my mood. If I'm feeling a little more tired than I need to get up, I'll listen to a little louder, faster. If I'm feeling kind of keyed up and I need to bring cadence down a little bit, then I'll listen to something more poppier. I love bands like I'm a big fan of this British pop band called there's like 20 bands named but this one, and again I lose but they're amazing. Best live. Yeah. But in any case, yeah, are they're the subconscious, right? I mean, think about a Bob Dylan song or a drummer song or a poem. The words don't mean anything when read literally, but they're tapping into that they're pulling on neural threads of emotion based on either timbre or cadence or something independent. That to me, I often say Johnny Cash is hurt. I say we song.
Rothschild song. I think Rick produced that. I'm pretty sure it's yes. Like Rick pulled Johnny Cash out of a dark place to do something that back is a great thing ever in music, which is like haunting covers song original. Johnny Cash and Joe Strummer did a version of Redemption together that is that Rick produced, which is on in my house, for hours. On Bob Marley song, sung by Johnny Cash and Joe Strummer. Sometimes I think what it would be on the wall when these guys were songs. There's certain songs where you're like elicit an emotion, unlike anything else. I mean, I was trying to figure that out with Rick too. Certain songs that pull out on the side of the road, or just inspired, done, or all of those kinds of things. Remember your family, loss, stuff. I hurt myself today by certain songs that I love so much that I actually won't play them during a relationship until the relationship passes duration, because you start sharing in those experiences with somebody, and it starts to become associated with the relationship, creating the dopamine of love, and that relationship ends. The song is forever thing. There's certain songs that I will never play in somebody else. They're mine. I just have those up. And I think that there's like levels. There are levels, right? Exactly. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, and think about kind of preparing for episode. Correct. Great about that process of preparation, and mentioned. By the way, are you doing solo? Are you the only one? No, well, you, Rob. I should say, really the first. First of all, we're equal partners. You're just a pretty face. I'm aging, man. Not the I actually, I like aging. A lot of people get friends with Claire, and it's all about not aging. I don't want to live past. I'm just trying to get as much done as I can in a short life, right? With integrity, heart, and accuracy. And you like, oh yeah, Erickson development. Realize that every stage of life is a set of neural circuits trying to resolve a problem. And if you're going to try and avoid that progression, sure, it might live longer. But it's sort of like saying, want to go high school jiu-jitsu. No, you graduated high school a long time ago, right? So I actually look forward to the future. I'm starting to shift. I think that my biology will shift. I'll fight that. I try and take care of myself, but I don't want to get sick. I don't suffer. It does, but I'm embracing development. I mean, we're not children and then adults. Our entire life is one long development. And if you fail to embrace that, you fail to extract. So, in any event, for the I record. Rob is in the room. I'll sometimes stop and ask him for feedback if I feel like I'm landing right here. He'll let me know if it's not here. The early days of the podcast was that long ago. Ignoring at my and starting, going up the room, and we're all just kind of asking prayers of what to do. With him gone, there will be another dog. And as you know, I didn't move it brief process, but having him there gave me that I missed. But in my mind, he's still there. So, and in time there'll be another dog, and maybe there'll be a dog and a couple of running around. but that would be more distracting. So, but there's no podcast that exists just because of the podcast. Joe, your podcast. It's not just a staff of people that post stuff. That's just the top level content. There's the constant feedback and information and trying to hold on to something that's essentially everything has to evolve, but you can't guess it. Anytime a company brand or a course or a scientist has done that, it just ends up terrible. It becomes like a centaur version of itself.
So Rick is very the power of the people great to inspire and to destroy. So be careful selection of people that are in the room. Me, I never really thought of it that way. I thought only positive.
Oh, by adding. Oh, I think if there were an audience, someday I'd love to do a lot of podcasting.
I saw you doing like a couple of live things. Great, you're paving the way there.
Well, we did try. I went up to the University of British Columbia, and did a lecture on a college campus, and one of the more gratifying happens is got this kid that stood up and said, "I've never been to a college campus. I didn't think I could go to college." And I think online, whoever you are out there, that meant so much to me. I was like, something about that. I was like, okay, all the way up. Person, you can get out a lot more. Public speaking events, it's not like it's that lucrative or anything, unless you're a celebrity or politician. I'm sure that that's not what it's about for us. It's really about being able to connect with people in a different venue and for interaction. That I don't know how many of them will do, but I'm curious to see how it goes. But I'd love to do a podcast.
But is it energizing? My fear is the fear of the introvert that I don't know if I can handle love fascinating people all around. I don't know.
Well, we'll invite a few haters to. Well, yes.
But I love the. I don't know. No, it makes me nervous. Jordan Peterson is currently on tour. I got a chance to hang out with him.
Oh, right. He does a lot of that.
Yeah, he does like now on tour. And
he doesn't have any small kids.
No.
Yeah, you should.
But it's just exhausting. I mean,
yeah,
I'm just speaking from an athlete perspective. What your McTaggart was about. It's just, I mean, potentially 2 hours, then off, like hanging out with a lot of hours focused. Keep finding your place of like calmness and say.
Well, and you're staying in hotels, your circadian rhythm is disrupted. You're not getting like cold and sauna, work out everything is optimal. I think done in patches, I could it. Fun to meet places. I'm doing a public lecture for the Lundbeck Foundation June 3rd, and that one is particularly gratifying for me. The Lundbeck Foundation, the fact that they invited us, want me to talk about what lab does, or you want to talk about this stuff on the podcast? They're like, no, not your lab. We want to hear about this stuff and that stuff that's covered up. So that was amazing and tells me that, that they're changing now. I think 2020 and 2020 reveal a lot of things about ourselves. But one thing that they make very clear is appetite, tools for mental health, but also understanding about science and how science is done. Thanks to you, the flattery, it's true gratitude. There is now a runway. I always forget this guy's name, the virus.
Vincent Bracaniella.
Yeah, amazing, right? I mean, forgetting controversy around all the stuff in 2021. I mean, he is an encyclopedia of all things virology.
People should listen to his podcast, Virology, incredible lecture and education. Fascinating. Yeah. People take again that leap of all that education line. That's non-controversial at all. It's like everybody, they're him for the most part. It's best. There's no
he's a virus junkie. He likes bacteria, viruses,
But that said,
molecular biology.
we all say stuff carelessly all the time. So trouble on some of the things about like missing loudly, hearing like no way.
He just
But he's not making folks. There's a difference when you say stuff like off the cuff and say stuff like towards your principles. Thought about it for a very long time. You talking for hours, and you just say stuff. It's Will.
I was wondering. Okay, wait. How long have we been recording? I was wondering how long it was going to take for some.
That's why you.
No, Will Smith. I was wondering whether or not we make it. I had it planned. I was literally in the back. I had it planned that it about the Will Smith rock thing. I was going to say, amazing. The first conversation I had in a long time, which wasn't mentioned. Oh, no.
No, you're not full of it.
Here we go. We revealed some about human impulse control and lack thereof. But you know, Chris Rock has material for us.
Yeah, I think he's not short of material. If I knew when I knew a lot of comedians in conversation with people, I would have thought very different. People being human, I so much fascinating on display there. It's also in terms of becoming a topic that a lot of people are talking about versus war in Ukraine, for example, is also fascinating to watch. Like kind of news cycle.
Well, I think if I may, I sorry to interrupt, but anytime we observe something very limbic, very emotional, we generally empathize somewhat, right? We all know it's like angry. We all know it's like we all shocked. Images of war are for most people very hard to relate. The images are very traumatic and challenging to look at times, and most people have no idea what it shot at or what it feels like at their own what it feels like aggressor. So it's very. So I think that people naturally orient that familiar to them.
And people also forget they look at these celebrities. It's like looking at criticism of Will Smith. Like you forget that they're. That's one of the most surprising things to me about having done this podcast and met celebrities like that. They're human. They're all human. And that's inspiring to me. Like some of these great folks have won Nobel Prize and cool things. They're just human. Like the rest of them.
Well, if you look at actors and actresses, there's some right, and who also do well in the outside life, but their careers were built on the defending each other. That's got towards maybe positive, but also, let's be honest with you, neuroplasticity there, the areas of the brain that represent personality have to be quite different from somebody who tends to lots of personalities and pace working the reward system into the system of self-identity. And you have to imagine that can contort somebody's neurology in ways that maybe are not as they're not in touch with reality as we are. Earlier we were talking about neurotic and psychotic. They may be more borderline, they're kind of ground state than think. So I'm actually impressed anytime there's a celebrity who doesn't have life. I'm like, oh wow, finally somebody who's some semblance of the outside of normalcy.
So first of all, I can empathize the action, right? They're not. I think they're kind of not kind of shitty. We should probably talk privately. And otherwise, it's a dramatic play. It's almost like you are a fake actor.
There are all these questions, right? I mean, obviously, it was aggressive at some level. There's a question of whether or not it was also, I think most people feel yes. There's a question of the protective nature of it because apparently defense. But then there's also the context fact that he took that slap and then snapped right back so much that he thought maybe it was a mistake. He also waited with his hand behind his back.
That's his nature. He likes to stand like that. I mean, I got to connect. What Chris Rock did. Like I wish what Chris Rock did in terms of taking us out and keep going. First of all, props somebody getting that situation part. I think it like once.
You only have to be alive on this planet to just gamble.
I wish at that afterwards say something loving and kind with this and his wife, and then hit him real hard. Joke.
See, but there, I think in hockey they call it. I have a friend who plays hockey, and the idea is like if someone checks you really badly in the game, you don't go and check them. You don't get into a fight, but you like blatantly, like you. So what the ability to defer and to handle it, whatever fashion.
They're probably also friends and all those kinds of things. That they respect each other. Probably. But there's a comedian. I saw this. I was at an open mic. Texas. But you know,
we've gone to a few.
Yeah, so there is more sort of rougher kind of.
Yeah, you've been hanging out in like West Texas.
Exactly.
Austin, Duchesne, Lex, or West Texas.
Exactly. I put on a cowboy hat and cowboy. I'm talking like a cowboy. I belong out there.
He's gone from eating meat, athletic greens, rattlesnake.
Rattlesnake, exactly. No, there was a open mic. It was late at night, and I was one of the only people in the audience. A couple of drunk folks. One of them was a couple, and like bikers, like helmets, a guy and a girl, and then the comedian, the open mic did a joke about people who wear helmets. I don't know if it was on purpose or not. Did the joke, and then the guy about women wear, and the guy is this exact same situation. The guy stood up. There was no slap. This happened. He walked up to the comedian and said, like, he like pointed his finger down, down. This is an audience of like, and at midnight around then, nobody, no security, nothing. Actually, game time. Oh, then this guy, the energy, drunk, but also a biker, and what he felt his lady was now attacked by the this meeting was out of shape, small guy, not threatening at all, probably in trouble. The comedian after he went down, scared, paced back and forth, and then he did the joke. I was sitting, and I lean back, because that is comedy. And the guy was angry, sat there. And the comedian went on for a couple more minutes, and then did another bad joke, another joke about him. Like he leaned into it.
You go to a small club, or otherwise, you're in the shooting gallery. Like you're basically there, teed up as a pin. At it. We went and saw it in Rolls and I mean, he's just masterful in his ability to audience. But I felt, but no sympathy. This, you gotta take up front and bullshit. You're gonna get it. But he was very loving.
And funny. First of all, he's funny. Funniness really helps, but the ethic of the comedian, like, what I really like is like danger, there's risk, comedy. There's also consequences.
Have you watched that show, the show? Really good. I watched a few of them. Pleasure there. She plays a comic in, I think, 19 New York, and there's a character that somewhat resembles Lenny, sort of men. They're always getting arrested. I didn't learn about it from Joe. Anyways, the writing's great. Um, but yeah, comedy's designed to push it, not something science, right? Science, etiquette, or about constraining. This is something I confess on the podcast is making it clear, uh, interesting, surprising, and actionable. You have to constrain the amount and the style of communication. Otherwise, it becomes something else altogether. Right?
I saw Sandra Pichai, Google CEO. He likes mentioned not the Yoga Nidra, but the NSR, not rest podcast over meditation. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Why? What do you think that is? What is the difference?
Yes, non-sleep breath NFR is an acronym that I coined because it encompasses a lot of practices that are not meditation per se, but that bring the brain and body into a state of relaxation and focus. Hypnosis is one variant of NSR. There are other variants of NSR. You can stuff and find them. And I think that they caught on, and then uh, Google avid practitioner of NSR because it has this amazing ability to set your energy level and focus. Whereas with meditation, people find meditation hard. Part of the reason they find it hard is that it requires focus. NSR is a very calm and relaxing. You don't have to work hard. Whereas most forms, not all, but most forms involve cranking up the activity in the prefrontal cortex and trying to keep your thoughts as opposed to thinking thoughts, or focus on your breath, but then yourself back. That's quite intensive, more exhausting. And that doesn't meditation doesn't have NPR. People will have to imagine very hard and brain have 20 or 30 minutes break. He should, and I think he should go out for a jog and not listen to anything, or sit in a chair and just zone out, or do NFTR. The problem is people are not that good at shifting. We are all actually pretty good at people with your ADHD about this. Hyper focused on things that actually enjoy. Because dope and most of the drugs designed to see are drugs that increase the levels of dopamine. When you like something, there's dopamine focus. When you don't like something, it's hard to focus. Shifting is hard. I'm sure you've never been research or podcasting, and then all of a sudden you go for a run. You probably spend the first third of that run, and then in the middle third, you're kind of that thing fractured a bit. Then in the final third is because the brain doesn't shift. We can go from wakefulness to wakefulness sleep quickly, but we don't shift different consciousness like a step function, except in rare cases, right? Fear is one. All of a sudden we hear an explosion right now, it's a step function, or we're in alertness, right? Heightened state of alert. But NSDR is terrific at allowing people to learn to shift. And I actually ventured to argue that part of the value of meditation and exercise is the actual state that you get into meditation or exercise. But just as valuable is the transition that you have to take yourself from one state of mind to the other and then back again. When I look at David Goggins, those represents so many important things: drive, determination, override, emotional state, going from being a 300-pound plus person to never revealed anything substantial about what he did or what he basically right. But what's remarkable is so much of what he says is about those transitions, about taking oneself from a state of unknown to roughing oneself, like, and then being able to carry that into life. I think NSDR is immensely powerful, zero cost, and one of the reasons I'm such a fan of doing it is that most people don't meditate. They're also, I find this book by Scott Carney, I forget what it's called The Transcendence Trap. I have that title wrong, but there has been a fair number of cases that go into very extensive meditation, silent meditation, and return to normal life. And there are states of mind inside of extended meditations or silent meditations that are very beneficial. And I'm certainly not people don't meditate, but I know at least one person back from long extended meditation and wasn't able to shift their state back into one that was functional in regular life. And that book is a very dramatic story. I don't want to give it away. Um, Check out the book, but Scott told the story to me directly once, where enlightenment very unusual brain states are potentially hazardous to people.
So it's nice to focus not on brain that on the
right. I do. This morning I woke up a little bit earlier than I would like. I use this Reverie app, research back, REVRI.com. There's a free version of it, or you can try it for free. So I feel hypnosis, and I do self hypnosis back in, and if I can't sleep, just put in a state of meditation. I would hypnosis in the category that category we are. There are now some NFT scripts online if you just go that are
back up.
I do, yeah. I think the ones are quite good. I haven't affiliation with them, but it's mentioning it. I do. I really like that. I can, and as the more you do them, the more your brain is. I will sometimes stop podcast 7, 8 hours, and I'll stop and I'll do a 1 minute hypnosis, 1 minute hypnosis inside Reverie. You're only going to find that 1 minute hypnosis you are continually 10 and 15 minutes. Meaning, I do it every other day or something.
There's a YouTube 1 minute hypnosis.
There are, but inside of Reverie itself, you can find a really
pull it up. So
yeah, so Reverie is good, and then Michael he has some long hypnosis. Again, these are all free, and there's a lot of good research now on neural networks that shift your default mode network. It shifts how much of your brain you're using, and it also is very, very good at. I get so many questions about, hey, I'm really upset. I found out about my girlfriend's sexual past. Hey, I'm so upset. I found out. Oh, so and so died. How do I get? How do I? And hypnosis is very useful. Learn to bring themselves into relaxation. Literally project in their mind's eye very intense things that they don't like. And then for people other emotions in their body, learn to be calm while dissociate the mind body to some extent. Observe them and start to associate with positive. If you're an Android guy, so it should be available on Android. And then it does. Yeah, I know. I don't get
Android is a device of people.
Tell me this about Android. Now you want to. This is one thing that gets me. Because I'm very close to them. I feel like that.
You have great.
No, the messages always look green. I answered yours. But I feel like the Android phones are trigger happy. Like anything I touch does something. Whereas the Apple phone is built for like a macaque, which is great for me because I'm more of a macaque.
Oh, I see.
I think like you have to be more sensitive. You have to have. I've got fat.
Yeah. I see. And Android is well, maybe do.
What I would do is go into the most because I really like. I know it does with that. So I'll do the this one, hypnosis for just negativity. That's an hour-long one. The sleep and anxiety one, 40 minutes. Those you listen to as you fall. We're gonna do this now.
Yeah.
Create.
How often does the voice
watch? People really should know that stage hypnosis is about the getting self hypnosis, which is what we talk about here, reverie, and it's about getting your brain in. And again, I mean, there's a ton of neuroimaging data and work on trauma and relief, and our labs are working on David's lab. I really encourage people for NSDR, and if it's a little too wacky, then I would just put in NSDR, good NSDR scripts.
Yes, that's, by the way, Thunder, the fan of your podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't know him, and but I would, yeah, a lot of outlets picked up on his love of NSDR, and I can imagine running Google involves a lot of struggling a lot of
one of the great CEOs. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves him.
Have you interviewed him?
No. Actually, so the annoying thing about me being in Luca for 3 hours, CEOs don't understand. Like, not understand, but scheduling. So what happens is Thunder said, yes, definitely, I'm a fan of podcasts, fan of you. And then it goes executive listen, like, oh, that's fine. And then they need, all right, 1 hour? 90 minutes? 90 minutes? Yeah, right. Well, no, but like, it's like, no, we need more. And it's so hard to.
Do you still travel to your podcast, or
no? Most people come down here. Most people, but for certain situations, obviously, right. Or you're ahead of.
you get out on work for a lot of people have anklets so that they go to like stream your podcast. Probably happen. Have you ever been in a prison?
No.
You know,
either the station or on the
from my height. It's really weird finding out that they are in Alcatraz and there's something. You know, it's amazing how overlooked that they're there. But when I drive by and I think about it, I also think about the people who are in there who might be in episodes on Rogan and elsewhere. And Amanda Knox talks a lot about this, right? Whether or not believe her story or not, I happen to believe her story personally based on what I know. You know, I'm sure people agree with me. So what it's like to sell and know in your heart's heart. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of many worse. I can't.
That's so clearly unjust. Life is full of unjust, cruel things happen all the time. You lose loved ones for no good reason. You lose your job, your home. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of refugees now, and the war in Ukraine has really focused my mind much in the world. And so just cruel things happen all the time, and kind of suffering go on. People really close to you, love all around you. Traumatic events kind of focus your mind on this very practical. You know, how do we solve the problem? How do we escape? Like survival, shelter.
Remember that book, Fight on Western Front, World War I? There's this line in there, I forget what it is, about how war is like the smell of a skunk. Like a little bit is actually is slightly something slightly delicious of it. What it says in the book. I happen to like the smell of like ferrets. I had a pet ferret when I was a kid, and I like that. And most people it's repulsive to them, especially a gene or not. Some people have the gene that's the musky that's repulsive. Some people don't. Let me ask you this: other microwave popcorn, good or disgusting? There are people who have a gene that them to the perception that the smell of microwave popcorn that you buy is good. It smells like putrid vomit. certain elements within great popcorn. Um, it's prominent in France, this gene, and so in laboratories where you have a lot of French people, often like a lot of it. So a lot of it's in the perception that the people.
But okay, before I leave the NSDR, focus in general, as you said, shifting mindset. Is there advice you have for how to achieve focus on a task?
First of all, we have to modulators and very brief. There are a lot of things that will modulate your state of focus, directly mediate your sense of focus. So for instance, right now, a fire alarm often modulate our attention. Get up and leave. It's very hard to getting into the background at first. Modulating focus, but it's not really involved in the mechanism of focus. The same way, being well rested when you sleep, your autonomic nervous system adjusts states of alertness and focus. Calm works better than sleep deprived. So if you're sleeping better, you're going to focus better. So I always answer this way, a question like this, because the best thing that anyone can do for mental health, physical health, and performance, athletic or cognitive endeavors or creative endeavors, is to ensure that you're getting enough quality sleep, enough of the time for you, and that's going to take to talk about with them. Now, in terms of things that mediate focus, without getting into the description of mechanism, we have podcasts about that. Very clear that mental focus follows visual focus, provided that you're sighted. Much of the training that's done now in China to focus better literally has them stare at a target every so often, but really training themselves to read calmly and maintain tight visual aperture. When you read, you have to maintain a tight visual aperture. You're literally scrolling like a highlighter in your mind's eye, right? Obviously. So for people that have problems focusing, sleep well, learn to dilate and contract your visual field consciously. Done practicing with it, and then as I said before, it is very hard to get into a state of focus like a step function, like snapping your fingers. What you can do is you can pick any object, but ideally an object at roughly the same distance, placed at roughly the same distance if you're going to do that work, and stare at it, you're allowed to blink, and as your mind starts to drift every once in a while, to understand that's normal, but try and narrow your visual aperture and bring that into visual field so that that's the most prominent thing, kind of like portrait mode in your phone, which look very different in portrait mode than standard photograph mode. And then after doing that for 30 to 60 seconds, the work that you're about to do and really encourage yourself to do that. If you're somebody with low vision or no vision, you're going to use braille readers have trouble focusing because they feel other stuff and they hear other stuff. So it's learning to adjust that aperture consciously. And then, of course, the pharmacologic. Just enough caffeine, but not too much, right? We talked about white noise, brown noise, or no. It really varies, but it's very clear that binaural beats of hertz can shift the brain into a heightened state of focus and cognition. If you're going to use binaural beats, you should definitely use headphones. And there are a number of free apps out there. Versus 40 hertz frequency. Yes, supports the brain shifting into a particular.
Give us some binaural beats.
Yeah, so you're going to look. You want to find an app that offers 40 hertz. I think Brainwave allows you to slide bar up to the frequency you want. And I should say that there are other frequencies that are interesting, but 40 hertz binaural beats.
But you're saying that a lot of mixed science on the white noise, brown noise.
You really should be good at binaural beats are best accomplished by different frequencies. Yours, and then you have what's called the brainstem area that we've got what are called intraoral time difference. It extracts the delta essentially.
Turn it on.
And then in other things that can enhance focus, the pharmacology around this, things that they work.
Yeah.
There's your Ritalin, your Adderalls, your modafinil, which are prescription. A lot of prescription, not so much in my generation, but in people 35 and younger. I hear all the time from day traders, programmers, stuff that video games, Adderall use. I think that unless it's prescribed by a doctor for a specific purpose, she has that right, frankly. It's also has a number of negative effects on side effects. Also, there are a few compounds of alpha, 300 milligrams to 600 milligrams of alpha espresso. If you're well rested, you're like a 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, but then it's going to take off. And then there's this whole world of nootropics now, people trying to figure out that racetam, phenylethylamine combined with this. And, it's not quite in the place where you like it to be. There are a few companies that are better than others. Talk about some of these podcasts, but I would always start with behavioral tools and psychology. And then I suppose the other thing for focus is there's these more esoteric, but we covered this in an episode on workplace optimization. Where you place your screen. Staring down at a screen is not going to be as effective as placing it at eye level or above. When the eyes are up, literally, when your eyes are directed forward or up, your brainstem sensors for alertness are activated. When your eyes are down, actually, you're sort of like being pulled under water a little bit in the autonomic arousal. It's you're closing your eyes and one flex brainstem sensors that are active becoming correct, less active. But there's a really cool effect that's active now that work in small compact spaces. Wear a hood or a hat that can also focus like blinders on a horse. There are obvious reasons for them based on analytic work or kind of work correcting that you're seeing is best supported by these kind of environments, whereas the work in an outdoor environment or a high school environment lends itself to unintended kind of loftier ideas and more creativity. And that probably has to do with the fact that the natural tendency, reflex, to expand your visual field high school environment. Expansion of the visual field changes the way the brain works in time your engineering and biology oriented listening and music. Those that don't, the best way to think about it is have a narrow focus, portrait mode on your phone, where you're very alert, or fine slicing life time. It's like a think of it as a high frame rate, like you're shooting motion. Then you have a when you dilate your bigger time. One way to just let this land home is that if you've ever had a really exciting day or podcast interview or experience of any kind, flooded with dopamine and norepinephrine, alertness, motivation, all this excitement. It's like it goes by very, very fast. And yet when you think back to that, it's like a lot happened. This happened, that happened. Now think about the doctor's office in a blank waiting room with no interesting art on the wall. It feels like it goes by very, very slow. Dopamine and norepinephrine are all-time low. And yet when you think back on that experience, it's nothing. Parsing time. So those are the roughly the tools and the chemicals around time perception, time domain. There's a wonderful book, I'm forgetting the title, wonderful and forgetting the title, by Dean Bordomano, LA. But I think it's called The Brain is a Machine, that talks about this expansion and contraction of the time domain and what you do to leverage it in work and creativity.
It's fascinating that one way to find focus for me is to experience track of time. We're operating in time.
Well, and you mentioned kind of cramming for something, a lot of adrenaline, and it's a lot done under pressure because of the way that you slice it. You don't actually have more time. that you're finally in the brain state that lends itself well to parsing information really quickly. Now, if we ramp up your levels, stress enough, definitely more or less normal distribution. Get you stressed enough, it's hard to remember anything you're not parsing that well. But in that middle range, almost every study shows that the higher levels of autonomic arousal, meaning norepinephrine and adrenaline in your system, is more effective. We always hear stress and adrenaline, bad, bad, bad. But my colleague Ali Crum at Stanford has done these beautiful studies where if you just educate people on how adrenaline makes them sharper thinkers, they become a sharper thinker. If you educate them on the fact that stress makes your cognition worse, your cognition gets worse. I don't wear a sleep tracker. I tell people that sweat or sucks, they naturally perform less well the next day. So your recovery is high. And so I don't have anything against those companies, but in fact, I some of their technology is very useful in this context. But you want to determine your mindset around yourself. Hey, deadlines sharp, pressure makes you sharp, build
stress and anxiety. What is that, and can it be leveraged good?
Absolutely. Stressing, whether or not you get into a cold ice bath or a hot sauna so hot you want to or get hit square in the face over text, you really didn't want to hear or see. Adrenaline. It's just adrenaline. So your subjective readout of that and what it means is important.
So you can just channel that.
Well, you can. If you agree with the following statement, which I do, and many data support it, which is Ali Crum's statement, not mine. She directs the Mind Body Lab. It's brilliant, by the way. Brilliant Harvard trained. Yale trained licensed clinical psychologist, also professor there. She's in Division I athlete, gymnastics and martial arts. And her dad is a longtime martial arts trainer. He's done work with special. She's an amazing human being and very humble, very kind, lovely woman and professor of science. She says anything you do, and but especially stress, consequence of that thing, and so if you consume a lot of information about the powers of stress on your best, if you consume a lot of information about the power of stress to cripple you, there's absolutely no question. The data are striking. And this is not growth mindset. What do you believe about stress based on the dominant knowledge that that's why it's fun to watch David Goggins go again, or Jocko, or Joe, or some campaign, put out this information about, or Ryan Hall, who ran for Stanford and then now is like in powerlifting thing and running. Then there are others too, of course. Start to consume a lot of that information. It's not just inspiring; it actually changes your perception of what your own stress means. They can actually get better from stress. You're in the ocean of knowledge that stress grows. You're in the ocean of knowledge. I was thinking like a pool in the summer. You got the pool of all people. You got the diving, you got the high dive, and all that. If you believe that experience of belly flopping off the high dive is a better diver, in some sense, at least in this analogy, it will. Whereas if you feel that it's just the most embarrassing thing ever, and it's going to cripple your ability to get out and dive in front of anybody ever again. Well, you're right about that too.
Yeah, we actually talked with Carl about depression, all those kinds of things that these what are commonly seen as negative journeys to be when reframed.
One of the reasons I enjoy our friendship is bring this Russian, which I don't really understand at this level. How could I? I'm not Russian, but this mindset, like there's pain in it. When I watched that Hedgehog in the Fog, no wonder it's the most depressing, sad, beautiful, and Sabbath so sad. Whereas out here, it's like that's me. My mother would not let me watch that. She thought it was too chaotic.
Too chaotic.
Too chaotic. She was like, chaotic.
Things going on.
Captain King. We were allowed, and then Mr. Rogers we were allowed. I never really liked shows. I like doing things outside in the yard. Trap all the animals. I didn't want to watch stuff on. But Hedgehog in the Fog is enough to turn any kid lost. Here we go. I fell in love with it. Showed Kitty Wong to me.
People don't know, and we're watching little clips here. And the hedgehog that is wandering about in this fog at night, and
Kitty Fog is so good.
And there's the feeling of searching, and then there's a